Hello and welcome. This is the Love Not Tolerance podcast. My name is Raven Kushner. I am a fine artist who celebrates underrepresented beauty and paints dreams of racial harmony. So I wanted to start off with some updates on my ongoing saga to become a full-time fine artist. This week I was researching MFA programs, thinking about the pros and cons of that and figuring out if it was reasonable or doable for me to do something like that right now. The cons are fairly obvious, mostly being time and money. So most of them are extremely expensive. I've seen anywhere from, $40,000 to $100,000 for a Master of Fine Art in studio arts. So that's not really realistic, nor is it optimal, obviously. I think entrepreneurs have enough burdens without starting off with that level of debt. But if it's something that can help your career, it's certainly something worth looking into and seeing what the alternatives are. I did find some that were less expensive. I think the least expensive one I found was about $34,000 total for tuition, which is pretty good. Certainly better than $100,000. And what I liked most about that particular program, it's from the Maharishi International Institute. What I liked about it is that they focused on art springing from your spiritual practice, and not just art. They teach a lot of different subjects, and all of them have as their base the spiritual practice of transcendental meditation. Now, I've never tried transcendental meditation. There's certainly lots of types of meditations out there, but I'm interested. So even though I don't feel like getting the master's is doable at this time, not only because of the expense, there's other reasons as well. One is the time off that's required. You would need to spend about 4 weeks a year in person. So they are located in Iowa, so that would mean traveling from Texas to Iowa 4 weeks out of the year, 2 weeks and 2 weeks. So 2 weeks, I think, in the spring and 2 weeks in the fall or something like that. The problem is I am working full-time right now for the time being and trying to, first of all, I don't like asking my boss for anything just because it's a hassle, but certainly 4 weeks off when I typically only get 3 days off is not really realistic. But there is another reason why I feel hesitant to embark on any kind of formal degree program, aside from the time and money expenses, there is something to be said about the freedom of, and I don't consider myself self-taught, although I did see a statistic that said that most working artists are self-taught, or at least not self-taught, but are outside of the formal school system, which I found that interesting. So that would indicate really that there are other skills that come into play when it comes to becoming actually a working artist. But I think that there is a sort of groupthink that comes into play when you're in an educational setting, even in a setting that purports to teach everybody how to explore their own art in their own way. I think naturally any organization is going to have a level of groupthink which can affect your authentic voice. So before I would leap into any kind of formal program, I think I need to look at the alternatives and just piece together my education as I've done so far. Now, I did go to 2 years of formal art school at a community college in California, El Camino College, which was an excellent program, a perfect foundation. And I would actually recommend anybody take the community college route and then see what you want to do, especially if you already have a bachelor's degree in something else. But even if you don't, it's a good way to really see where you're at and really explore in a time and financially less costly fashion That way you can really figure out what your voice is. I mean, spending, 50 grand a year to find your voice, that's just too much. And you can go to community college and spend a tiny fraction of that and really figure out what your voice is. And, because it's going to change from when you start to 2 years later when you get your degree. And then you can decide if you want to go ahead and go and get your bachelor's of fine arts, or if you just want to continue learning on your own, as I did. I was in the situation where I couldn't get a second bachelor's degree. I already had a bachelor's degree in English, and I have a master's degree in creative writing as well. So getting another bachelor's degree just wasn't feasible. First of all, I didn't qualify for financial aid because I already had a bachelor's, and it was just too expensive to pay for out of pocket. So for a long time, I really felt shut out and depressed by that. But it's really been a great experience to find all the alternative programs out there that are a fraction of the cost, and you get the same education, if not better, because you can choose the classes that you're really interested in, and you still get the camaraderie of, interacting with other artists. But you can do so in a way that's where you can set your own schedule instead of being at the mercy of the school schedule. And you can choose your teachers, and there's just a lot of benefits to doing some of these atelier programs or some of the online programs that teach art. And I'll provide some of those resources in the show notes in case anyone is interested. I've done a few. The two I recommend the most are New Masters Academy and also the Milan Art Institute. They're very different, and for me, I had to do both. I really couldn't do just one because they're very different in personality, and I've found that just throughout my life, I do better when I have autonomy and when I can kind of choose my own destiny. So kind of taking the strengths from both of those programs and integrating that into my fine art education has been the best choice for me. So that's where I am right now. What I've decided is to continue my self-study with the programs that I'm in. And also, because I really liked the Maharishi education plan, I'm going to learn transcendental meditation to see if it's something that resonates. I already meditate right now, but I'm curious to see what this program is like. And they have an informational meeting this Saturday, so I'm going to check that out this week and see if it's for me. Another thing that I did this week for my art is I was working on a diptych for a class that I'm taking on portraiture, and the assignment was to create a diptych, which is two paintings that are meant to be seen as one. And the topic was, it was a self-portrait, and the topic was Jekyll and Hyde. So you're supposed to depict in the paintings the two different sides of your personality. And that was really a cool exercise because of the self-discovery and also, working on the paintings to try to depict what I mean in a way that's visually compelling. So I started off by just jotting down aspects of my personality that I noticed, and I tried to just word vomit just things that came to mind. And it's pretty difficult to be objective about yourself, but the longer that you do it, the longer you start writing stuff down, you get past the this is what I want to be to this is what I am. This is the feedback I've gotten, and this is what I notice in my own life. And so I started circling all the terms that were similar, and then I picked the ones that had the most words associated with them, and I split them up into the two different paintings. So one of the paintings is me in a joyful state. I'm like grinning, not really in a flattering way, but I'm just grinning at the camera. And I did this by setting up the camera on a timer and taking selfies to try to depict the mood that I was trying to convey. So for the silly side of me, the side that's carefree and childlike and believes in everything, loves everybody, wants to be loved, loves to make people laugh, all that kind of stuff. That was the first painting, and it shows me, with the big cheese eating grin. And then the second was my more deeper intellectual, meditative, and more melancholy side. And that was me leaning on a table, staring into a candle, looking away off into space. So I really liked the results. They really do reflect both aspects of my personality really well. And also the painting itself, the paintings turned out pretty well. So I'm happy and proud about that. But in doing the diptych and the self-portraiture and the self-discovery, it really made me realize how much of our identity is performance and how much is authentic. And I don't think there's any way to completely get away from the performative aspect of our personality. We do have to engage with other people, usually in social settings such as jobs or schools or families or whatnot. And so there are certain aspects of our personality that are going to be more conducive to community and getting along than other aspects. So I noticed that my joyful, childish, jokey side comes up more often, but the darker and more thoughtful, philosophical side really informs what I do and how I go about it. So it's interesting to think about how many aspects of our life are performative like that. Like a lot of my work deals with race, and really not just race, but race, gender, our different roles, such as being a parent or a child or a partner. All of these have their performative aspects to where we are doing what we are expected to do and not necessarily what we're genuinely interested in or what comes naturally to us. And also our ideas specifically about, race and gender really, are kind of dictated to us from a young age. So what we naturally gravitate to is going to be based on what was ingrained in our brains from a young age. So if you're taught that, first of all, like little girls don't play with trucks, they play with dolls. Now, who knows what you might have chosen if you had had a free choice, but since dolls were given to you and you grew to enjoy that, that's what you naturally choose. But naturally is such a tricky phrase because what's natural? I mean, dolls are not natural in the first place. Little toy trucks are not natural. These are things that we create. So, and, people have their agendas, parents have their agendas, society has its agenda. So there are a lot of forces that cause us to perform our race and our gender and our other roles the way that we do. So, and that's like the phenomenon of going back home. Like when you think about like you've gone away to college and you've started learning and growing and meeting different kinds of people and feeling a different kind of way, like feeling different than you felt in high school. But then you go back home and you find yourself falling into the familiar roles that you had before and really kind of wanting to get away and go back to where you were free to really be who you were. So I really think race can be that way as well. And for example, especially being a person of color, there's a lot of expectations from the dominant population, from the white power structure, but also internally from our own groups. We can sort of be expected to listen to a certain kind of music or like a certain kind of activity or eat certain kinds of foods. And then if you don't, well, first of all, if you do, then you're a stereotype and the dominant society thinks that they know you and they talk to you as if they know you. Like, oh, you people eat chicken, or, oh, you people love to dance, or that kind of stuff. But at the same time, your own group can also have some of these same expectations to where you're expected to know certain musical artists, for example. You're expected to like certain kinds of food. You're expected to have certain attitudes. And then if you don't, if you do, you're accepted. But if you don't, sometimes you can be rejected by your own group, because certainly there's this notion and idea in the Black community where you can have your race card taken away, where you're no longer accepted as part of the community because you don't do enough of the things that are considered acceptable for the group. And obviously that's not everybody. Not everyone thinks that way, but you're going to run into people that do treat you that way, that if you don't talk a certain way, if you don't do things a certain way, if you don't listen to certain things or go certain places, then you're not truly Black. And therefore you can be subject at the extreme, even to violence, but on a milder note, just rejection socially. And I had an example of this. I remember being in the store and I was in line and this black man was striking up a conversation, very friendly, it was very pleasant. But he said something along the lines of somebody that he was dating, and he was like, "Oh, don't worry, she's a sister. I know how you sisters are about that." So basically what he was saying is like, "Don't worry, my girlfriend is black, not white. I know how you people," meaning black women, "are about us black men dating outside of our race." Now, he didn't know me at all from Adam. He's just somebody we struck up in a conversation because we were in line together. But he thought he knew me because of my color. And that's an interesting thing. I don't care who anybody dates, especially a stranger. Like, what do I care if his girlfriend is black or white? Why would I be upset that a stranger is dating another stranger that I don't know because they're a different color? I don't think like that. And it's none of my business in the first place. Even if I were against it, it's just none of my business, but I don't care. But it was interesting to see that he assumed that I did. And I remember a situation where dealing with the white or dominant culture, I was at a party. This was back in the junior high or high school, I think. And some music was playing and we were all dancing like in a circle like we used to do when I was young. And, we're all in a circle dancing and, not dancing with anyone in particular, just dancing as friends. And this guy that I didn't really know too well, I think I just met him at the party. But in front of everybody, he's like, "Oh, get out there and show us, Raven, show us how to do it." Like I should teach this circle of people how to dance. Because we were all doing the same things, we were all listening to the same music, but because I'm black, that means that I am a natural dance instructor and I can teach all of the white people how it's done. So these things are very, at their mild level, they're just kind of humorous or sometimes irritating, kind of depending upon your own mood. But I was thinking about the repercussions of the performance and the notion of authenticity. And what does that really mean? Does being authentic mean really going your own way and just liking whatever you like? Or because a lot of times people will accuse you of being inauthentic because you don't fit a stereotype. So, for example, I've been accused many times of quote unquote thinking that I'm white, which if you're a stranger, how can you know what I think? But because I'm not doing what's expected, that means that I think that I'm white. So in order for me to be considered authentic, I would have to play a role and be fake and give people what they want. Now, I'm just too old for that. I have grown children. I just can't play that game anymore. I cared when I was younger. It was more painful being rejected, but I truly don't care if somebody thinks that I think something or other and they're a complete stranger to me. It's just too ignorant to even land. It doesn't have an effect on me anymore. It's just extremely stupid. But it lets me know where they're coming from and lets me know the limitations of their mindset. But it's good to play with these notions because they inform my art, but they can also inform kind of how you interact with people and how you assess where people are coming from. So one of the things I'm working on is my portfolio, and I'm putting it together digitally before I actually paint it out because I want to plan it in advance. And I don't typically do thumbnails like in pencil and paper. Thumbnails are just when you plan out your painting or your drawing or your sculpture or your project. You do it on a small scale so that you can kind of see what it's going to look like. I usually do that digitally because it's faster and I can move things around a lot quicker. And if I want to change something, it's just a lot easier to do it in Photoshop or Procreate than it is on pencil and paper. But I want to play with this notion of the Oreo. So that's one of the paintings I'm going to be working on as part of my portfolio, because I've been called that. An Oreo is somebody who is black on the outside and white on the inside, meaning not that they actually think that they're white, but that other people accuse them of that because they do not do the things that are expected of them as a black person. So So these are just some things to think about. How much of your roles that you play, whether it's race, gender, your parent, as a partner, as a neighbor, all of these things, how much of them are your authentic self, and how much of what you're doing is authentic? Like, that's what you really like. So if you like a particular type of music, do you feel free to listen to it? Or are you worried that if somebody were to catch you listening to that kind of music, what would they say? Or if you're a woman and you say want to learn auto mechanics or something like that, do you feel free to do it? Or do you feel like someone would think of you a certain way, or you would be rejected in a certain way if you were to explore that? So these are just some foods for thought. That's really all I have for you for this week. Certainly, if you have any questions or topics that this conversation sparked in your mind and you'd like for me to address them on the show, please use the questions at ravenkushner.com. I'll provide the link in the show notes. Check out my website where I have fine art prints and products. That's ravenkushner.com. Please follow me on Instagram. That's ravensfineart.ravenkushner. And I hope that you all have a lovely, wonderful, and productive week. And I will speak to you again next time. Bye-bye. 'Cause I've been living life right.